Welcome to Real Fit, a podcast featuring real conversations with real women athletes. I'm your host, Pam Moore. I'm a freelance writer, body positive health coach, certified personal trainer, and a mom of two. And like you, I don't have time for bullshit. I created this show for every busy, badass woman who struggles with the question, am I enough? I'm here to tell you that you are. And my goal is to share stories that will inspire you and let you know you're not alone. Thanks for being here for this episode of Real Fit. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. It is a gorgeous sunny day here in Boulder. I am recording this intro in April, but I actually interviewed our guest, Shannon Fable, back in February. So since that time, a lot has changed. I feel like that was like winter, and it was like, is this pandemic ever going to be over? And I'm really happy to say that I got my first vaccine this weekend, and I'm really excited to get my next dose. So there's a lot to be excited about, including, of course, this episode. I explain in the episode a little bit about how I met Shannon, so I'll save that for later, but she's wonderful. She is a speaker, she's an author, she's a thought leader in business development and strategic innovation. Her main deal is fitness, though. She is so knowledgeable about all things fitness. She has been a fitness industry professional for years and has helped develop a number of brands that you've probably heard of and even used, including Anytime Fitness, Schwinn, FIT4MOM, and BOSU. She also co-founded GroupEx PRO, which is a cloud-based group fitness management tool. It's also a lifesaver. I can tell you that from experience. She has been the chair of the ACE Board of Directors and is still very active in the ACE community. She's also a Book Yourself Solid business coach. And through that, she helps fitness professionals navigate the industry and make more money. I've been to a couple of her free trainings through the Book Yourself Solid system, and I have to say they are totally worth your time. Shannon is just a ball of energy. She's awesome. I'm really excited about sharing this conversation with you. And I do have an important trigger warning. We do talk about disordered eating, and specifically, we talk about bulimia in this episode. But of course, that is not all we talk about. We talk so much about kind of finding the joy in exercise, kind of taking the have to out of it and how we work toward emphasizing the want to. One of the really interesting things we talked about also was when Shannon had a revelation about a lot of the cueing she was giving her group fitness classes and how it was not aligned with who she wanted to be and the messages that she wanted to be sending, and how much self-awareness you need in order to give cues that are going to resonate with everybody and not alienate anybody. So I think if you are a group fitness instructor or if you take group fitness classes, you're going to really enjoy this episode. We talked for like an hour. Another thing we talked about that was great was just the challenges of trying to raise daughters. She has one daughter. I have two daughters. How do we raise daughters with good body image when this is something that we're all still exploring our own journeys? So I could totally relate to that. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about that. But Shannon is a dynamo. I'm just so pumped to share this with you. Enjoy. Okay, Shannon Fable, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Pam.
I'm so excited you're here. Before we dive in, I'm sure you don't remember this, but I just want to share how I originally became aware of you. It was 2011, I want to say. Like, I remember because I was very newly pregnant with my first child, and I came to your training in Parker. It was Schwinn cycling certification. And I had been teaching cycling for years, but I was teaching at a new place, and they wanted me to have that cert. And I thought 8 hours of like learning how to teach spin, which I already know how to do, like, fine, whatever, I'll do it. Anyways, I showed up and I was engaged the whole day. I thought you were like so dynamic. I was just like blown away by your presence and your honesty when you were talking about like having been on bed rest and then having to come back to fitness and how important it is to connect with the people at the back of the room. And then we reconnected. It was only like a year and a half ago, but I had
remembered you that whole time because you have such a sparkling personality. So I'm just so excited that you're joining me today.
Oh, I loved it when you told me that story when we reconnected, and just so appreciate that we have been able to restart up our conversation and help one another in our professional lives lately. So thank you.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. Well, tell us a little bit, just really quick, about who you are, where you live, and what you do.
Sure. As you just mentioned, my life has been fitness for 25 years, kind of gone through an evolution. I started off as an instructor, personal trainer, worked every job at gyms. Along the way, became an educator in the fitness space, and then a programmer that made up the things for the educators to teach the people that teach you, if that makes any sense. And in the last 8 years have really shifted from in front of the classroom and in front of creating those things to being behind the scenes in business strategy for fitness organizations, professionals, and companies. So that's where most of my work is now. And obviously, the last year has been really crazy because everyone is in a deep need of innovation. So that is what I'm focused on now, is innovating in the fitness industry.
Awesome. So, and I know that your original path was not there. It's been a winding road to get there.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about the role that fitness played in your life, starting when you were a kid, and how that has shifted over the years. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought about this, and it's funny because fitness, and I think people that end up in fitness don't really know how fitness became a part of them because it just was. That's kind of my story. I somehow ended up in a dance class when I was 3. So from 3 until 25, I danced. And so it wasn't fitness, it was just life, right? Mm-hmm. I went to dance class. I would say I remember vividly when I was in 4th grade, I was getting out of school early to go teach dance and then do dance. So like at 9, 10 years old, this was just a way of life, right?
You were teaching dance at
yes.
9 and 10?
Yes, okay. I was assisting with the littles, and it was so fun. So I think from a long time ago, I knew that, fitness was a part of me, movement was a part of me, and then teaching other people to fall in love with movement was a part of who I was. So I really never thought of it as fitness. Ended up dancing with the Joffrey Ballet when I was 11 or 12, mm-hmm. and quickly realized I was not going to be a professional dancer. And that was a hard thing to overcome. But what every ballerina does that's kicked out of being a ballerina, you do the thing that you're not supposed to do as a ballerina, and you become a cheerleader. So I became a cheerleader. And then again, I was practicing 3, 4, 5 days a week, going to gymnastics, teaching gymnastics. So that became fitness, but I didn't think of it as fitness. I had to do it every day to do my sport. Mm-hmm. Went to college. And I think that's when I first realized what fitness was, or intentional training was, besides just practice, because I went to the University of Florida, great D1 school with an amazing strength and conditioning program. And we had our own trainer. So same trainers that coached the football team and the basketball team, and they did weight training with us and tried to shift our mindset from just, that caloric balance or imbalance as it was for cheerleaders, and tried to get us strong so we could stay strong all year because we cheered year round. So that was really when I first realized that fitness was a thing beyond a way of life. And then, obviously after, and we'll unpack this, I'm sure, but after college, I was still doing a little bit of cheerleading, but, I wasn't training. I wasn't on a team. So I found a gym and I ended up on the stairmaster every night, stumbled into a fitness studio back in the 90s when they were doing step, and it just spoke to me. Yeah. And the rest is history. That's when I realized that, fitness had to be something that I do, but I find myself very lucky. Fitness has always been a joy. Mm-hmm. It's never been a chore. And that's the difference between people that do it to do it, right? And then do it as a means to an end. But interesting evolution. I didn't really think of it as fitness till about 20 years ago.
Okay. So when you start after college, you get on the stairmaster. When you say you always love to do it, what was the motivation behind the stairmaster? I've done my share of stairmastering, and it's always been like, can I just get this done? Like, what can I watch or listen to like make the time pass?
Yes. So let's see. I did not eat very much when I was in college. And when I got out of college, I realized that food tasted really good. So I traded this restrictive eating for excessive exercising. And to your point, a Stairmaster was one of the easiest things to do when you didn't have food energy. Does that, I don't know if that makes sense, but you could lean on the handlebars and you could zone out and watch TV. Do you remember? It's like the TVs were above the Stairmaster and you had to have your Walkman tuned into an FM station to watch something. And I would go at 9 o'clock at night and just watch a TV show and be on it all day. So I think the Stairmaster spoke to me because I didn't have to propel myself forward running.
Yep.
There weren't as many other opportunities back then. And everyone just thought that the Stairmaster made their butt look good. I mean, it was totally aesthetics and the least amount of effort to get the calorie burn that I was after, if I'm being totally honest about what drew me to the Stairmaster.
Yeah. Well, let's be totally honest, because I don't think there's a point of being anything else. So you say that you didn't eat a lot in college. Were you surrounded by other cheerleaders that also didn't eat a lot and it was just the culture? Or at that point, were you like, this isn't right? Like, when did it start to feel like something needs to change?
You know what? I mean, I don't think I really knew I needed to change my relationship with eating or my distorted view of eating and my body. And there's a lot in there until probably my late 20s. So I'll go back to college. In high school, I can remember actually as early as junior high school with my neighbor friend, us ordering diet foods from the back of 17 magazine and sending it to her house because she always got home before her parents, so no one would ever see it, and then opening in secrecy in her bedroom and then hiding it under her mattress. And I think back then it was the promise of boys would like you if. So it started societal less than, what I'll talk about next. It very much was a societal thing. And that is still the thing that tugs at me. I'm sure tugs at anyone listening to this and anyone that they know, what the image of the perfect girl is. And I didn't look like that. I was 5 feet tall. I was small, I was tiny, but I didn't see myself in the magazine, if that makes sense. And, fast forward, I got into cheerleading, as I mentioned, and at a D1 school, it's highly competitive. There's only 7 girls on the team, and weight was a part of our score. So, and I would say when I came into college, I don't know that I really thought of myself as bigger than, because I was a small person on my team. But you get to college where you're trying out with thousands of other cheerleaders. And every year that I cheered, that I was chosen as one of those 7, I was always one of the biggest ones. And when I say biggest, I weighed maybe 108 pounds, and I was always muscular. That was why I got kicked out of ballet, right? I didn't have these sinewy, long thighs. I had thunder thighs is what they called them back then. And I still have to catch myself. My daughter says thick now. But I had muscles. I am a muscular person. And that is why I weighed 108 pounds. And I knew that I was easier to throw around because we were a co-ed cheerleading squad. So we got thrown around in the air. Yeah. I knew I was easier to throw around than my 84-pound BFF. But you ask why. It wasn't necessarily that I saw other people restricting, but there was such a zone of secrecy, or maybe that's the wrong way to put it. Food was such a thing that we all witnessed because we all lived together, traveled together, always were together. You were always in a crop top, a bra top, and short shorts, and someone was always throwing you around and commenting on how heavy or how light you were. So when you put all of that together, not that we really knew how each other ate for real, but we would know if we were traveling, like I would see what the other girls would eat. My partner would see what I was putting in my mouth and make a comment about it. So there was just a lot of judgment around it. And so I fell into this trap of either eating in secrecy, which is bad. I remember this huge blow up in college where some of my friends, the girls that lived together, they had gotten a new puppy and we were all downstairs watching TV, and the puppy came down with a Butterfinger wrapper in her mouth. And everyone's like, ooh, who got caught? Who ate the Butterfinger? And if that just like highlights what my 4 years in competitive cheerleading felt like, you were just waiting to be called out, right? Or waiting for someone to say that you felt big or you didn't look good in that crop top. So I don't know, to answer your question, I know that wasn't succinctly. It wasn't that I knew that other people restricted it. I just knew that people were going to judge how I looked and how I felt in the air. So I started making my own rules around eating. And I found that not eating was the easiest thing to do, whether it was the cabbage diet, I'm sure you remember that, or it was eating frozen vegetables with marinara sauce on it for it to have some flavor. Like, it was just bad. So 4 years of just having a really bad relationship with food. I think the thing that made it worse was when I was a freshman, a girl that I cheered with died from bulimia, from complications of bulimia. Her heart stopped. And so we were no longer allowed to be weighed. That was frowned upon. And everyone thought that would make a huge difference. But what I found is it actually got worse because it wasn't outwardly talked about, but it became even more secretive. So we were all left alone with our thoughts and our own feelings, and we didn't know how anyone else was feeling. So yeah, it was a really messed up situation. And, you know, I was not textbook bulimic, was not textbook anorexic, but I've always had a really bad relationship with food and lots of rules around food and lots of splurging and then restricting and then going on this diet and all of the things. So yeah, college was really, really tough for me.
Yeah, it sounds like a tough environment. Was there any form of emotional support or counseling? Like, well, how was it? It sounds like it wasn't discussed really that this woman died or.
No, it was. And I mean, I don't want to use the word PTSD because it's not clinical at all, but I really blocked a lot of it out of my memory because it was such a tumultuous time. And I had another high school friend that passed away like 3 days before she did. So it's like, I just put it over here in a box and none of us ever really talked about it. I do recall them bringing someone in to talk to us about healthy eating and the dangers of having, but the environment didn't change. Does that make sense? So like, you can talk, can talk all day long about bulimia and anorexia, but no one talked about the grays in between. And I think that's really important. Like, just because you're not diagnosed bulimic or diagnosed anorexic doesn't mean that like there are not a million other ways of being classified as a disordered eater. Yeah. And yeah, like you said, the culture did not change at all because how can it? You're still being lifted by someone else. That they're going to comment on your weight. I mean, I don't fault anyone that I cheered with, right? Because the poor guy had to lift me in the air. That sucks. I feel bad. And when you look at a person next to me that weighs 84 pounds, you're like, why did I get stuck with you? I'd rather have her. That would be an easier job. So, you know, how do you change the culture? It's really tough, and I don't have an answer. I just pray every day that my daughter doesn't become a cheerleader. That's
you just read my mind. I was going to ask you because it sounds like inevitably the sport lends itself to a toxic culture. Like, how could it not?
How can it not?
Yeah, and I want to get back to what you said about disordered eating because it's only in the last, I don't know, maybe 5 years that I've made that distinction of like, whoa, you can have disordered eating without having an eating disorder. And I don't want to presume to speak about what it would be like to have an eating disorder because I wouldn't say I've had one, but I've definitely had disordered eating. And I thought that it was normal because it's like what everyone's doing. It's like, oh, are you getting dessert? If you get dessert, I'll get dessert. Or like, oh, I'm going to have a salad because I want to have birthday cake later. And all of the like mental energy you spend on it, that's disordered eating. And we, as a culture,
we think it's normal.
Think that's normal. Yeah.
We 100% think it's normal. And it's such a shame because food was meant to be enjoyed. Now, do I think there are better foods and less nutritious foods? Of course. But I love what you just said. The amount, and that's when I knew I had a problem. It's like the amount of energy and still, I mean, I am personally still going through it every day. It's not something you can just turn off. The amount of energy that I have and continue to expend on figuring out what to eat and what not to eat instead of just eating is really problematic for everyone. And I'm not going to say, yes, I will say more women than men because it is our culture. Like I go back to 7th grade where we were served that in the back of our magazines. It's like eat diet food that comes out of a package. And it's really problematic.
Yeah. Yeah, it is super problematic. So what, did you come to a point where you were like, this has to shift? Or you mentioned in your late 20s, that was when things began to change. Do you remember a moment of clarity or was it more gradual?
I think it's been really gradual. And I mean, you know my story. They're kind of paired together. I had a really hard time getting pregnant, had to see tons of doctors to figure out what my quote unquote issue was. Not an issue. I'm just not a very good baby maker. And that was the first time where I suffered a ton of miscarriages and then finally was pregnant and was so terrified. And everyone had their own reasons of why, right? The public had their reasons why I was having trouble. And that became more of the exercise stuff. So there was a point where I let go a little bit of the eating, but then I flipped it into an exercise disorder for real, like disordered exercising in excess or to control, like you said. And I think they're closely related, like control what I was putting in my mouth or offset what I put in my mouth. But when I was having all these struggles, and I was very open about my struggles, because it's another thing that I think women don't speak enough about. There are plenty of people that don't, well, just eat more, exercise less, don't do so much. You can control this. And I was right back in that mindset of everything is within your control. And for an Enneagram 1, that is like the worst thing to continue reminding me, is like, it's all within your control. If you just fix yourself, this thing that you want, you can have. So I wanted to engineer how I could have a baby. And, so I think my mind started to shift, like, wait, what part do you play? And I let go of some of my rules around eating, because like, okay, that's something that I can do. I can eat healthfully and nourish my baby to the best of my ability. I did let go of exercise, and not because of people telling me to exercise, but because I learned a very interesting thing, that exercise is actually stress on your body. And part of why I was unable to have kids or carry to term was because of cortisol and fight or flight, not just from exercise, but exercise was exacerbating it. And then, as you said, I was an educator and a performer. Like I traveled 45 weeks out of the year to present at conferences. And then I taught 7-10 classes a week. So it wasn't just the exercise, but then it was the public speaking on top of the exercise. Like everything was stress. So, you know, my doctors were like, I don't want you not to exercise because exercise is bad, but the amount of stress that you put on your body is bad. So where can we eliminate some of the stress that's being put on your body? So as I started to hear professionals speak in different terms about eating and exercise, I realized that my brain was really messed up when it came to what I thought about eating and exercise. So that was step one. And then, you know, my story about like laying in bed for 73 days in a hospital, not able to move unless I was in a wheelchair, going from like exercising from 3 until 35, and then being slammed into a bed where I'm like, well, can't I just, you know, do my bands? And they're like, no, don't do anything.
At what point in your pregnancy were you put on bed rest?
24 weeks.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. That's a lot of bed rest.
It was a lot of bed rest. So good times. But what happened to me then was just a shift in looking at coming back from exercise. So I didn't have a choice. I couldn't exercise. I had to be bedridden. When I came back and I started to take classes because I wasn't ready to teach, and I was shifted to having to be the student and not the professional, I started hearing all the things that had been coming out of my mouth over a microphone, and realized that I had been teaching from a place of baggage that many women have. So I remember having this very distinct vision when I was taking a yoga class as I was in tears doing chaturanga, not because I couldn't do it, but because I was hearing myself in the way she was cueing, where she was giving options, progressions and regressions. But I was like, the way that those words sat on me at that moment made me realize that the words that we have as instructors are very, very powerful. And I sat there, and why I started crying was I started thinking about all the words I had used. And I go back to the stairmaster, and then going into the room and becoming a step instructor, having disordered eating and disordered exercise and attachment to those two things, and cueing from that place on a microphone to rooms of hundreds of people. And I felt awful. So it was both a looking forward, like in service of how can I do this better? Because that is not fair. That's my own issue that I've got to fix. And then looking inward and saying, okay, how do I repair my relationship with food and exercise? And then how do I check it so it's not coming out of my mouth, even if I can't master it or figure it out? So it truly was around that time. And I won't say it's been a quick or easy process. I shared with you before we started recording, I'm now in a program with a clinician to change my attitude towards eating or towards food in general. Still, because now I'm more concerned about what I'm passing on to my kid, not my classes. I think I've gotten that down. Like I can turn it off when I'm in my professional setting, but now how do I turn it off in my personal setting? Because she's of an age where she's almost the age when I can remember ordering the diet food from 17 magazine.
Everything you were just saying, like, it reminds me of being a parent when you were like, I'm listening now to this person in the front of the room and I'm hearing these things and I'm going, that reminds me of when my kids speak in a harsh tone to me or to each other. And I think, oh, you jerk. And then I think, me. Oh, that's my voice. Oh, that's okay. Yes. I need to work on me. I need to, And I want to unpack that. Like, there's so much there. I mean, my sense of what's going on when you're trying to control your food and your body so much, at least for me, has been, it really comes down to this deep sense of like, I'm not good enough how I am, and I will be good enough if I'm thin enough, or if I'm sculpted enough, or if my abs look a certain way. And that's been the biggest realization for me of like, well, what would happen if I shifted my mindset to, I am good enough and I can be healthy, even if I don't look like these girls on Instagram. And that's, for me, a work in progress. That's
so much
every day trying, and I'm trying to like forgive myself for not being there and knowing, as you mentioned with your girls, like, or your daughter, I used to weigh all my food and my kids would be like, why are you doing that? And I didn't want to, I was just like, oh, it's like for my health. That's what I would say. And I was like, do I really believe that? You know, do I really believe this is a quote unquote lifestyle? No, this is like a diet disguised as a lifestyle. But I sort of half believed it for a while. And then I quit doing that. Like over 2 years ago. And my kids are 6 and 8. And my 8-year-old, she will mention it every once in a while. She'll be like, remember when you used to weigh your food? And I'm like, oh shit, can we all just forget about that? Can we pretend that never happened? But it did. They do. They watch. Yeah. So what are you trying to do? Let's start with you and your daughter. What do you feel is a good way to parent, or what are you trying that you feel like feels good?
Oh my gosh, I am by no means the expert. I've tried a lot of things. And the first is I have a really strict rule in this house that my husband and I, and no one that interacts with her, can label food as good or bad. There are things we eat to fuel our body, and there are things we eat for pleasure, and both are okay. But the stuff that you use to fuel your body, and this is the same rule that we talk about with everything. It's like, you have to do the things you have to do first, then you get to do the things you want to do next.
Yeah.
It's the same thing for food. So we have to fuel our bodies first, and we have to be really mindful about what we're expecting our bodies to do and make sure we give our bodies enough to do the thing. And then there are times when you 100% can eat because it brings you pleasure and it tastes really good and you're really excited about it. There are no good foods, bad foods, things that are in, things that are out.
I love that.
It works until she notices when I still have things that I have rules around. And that's when I invite the question, and I do re-explain it, and I go through the same lens or the same filter that you did. Like, is that really why I'm doing what I'm doing? Or do I still have an issue with food? And sometimes I don't know. And that's why I'm going through this new program. Same thing. I do weigh my food because I've been doing a macro program for a year and a half. And it's been the biggest change for me, though. It was a shift for me to realize, okay, you can have any food you want if you can play macro Tetris.
See, that made me crazy. For a while I was into it, and then it became like a part-time job for me. And I realized it was stressing me out. Like every social event was stressing me out. And I was using an app, and I was like asking the bot, like, what should I eat? And it was like right before my 40th birthday. And I was like, Pam, you're 39 years old and you're asking a chat bot what to eat? You've been hungry for 3 days? Like I found that just going, okay, I think I know what I want to eat. I think I can trust myself. That has helped me feel like I can trust myself in many areas of my life. And ask my husband, I second guess myself constantly, but it's better. It's better.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the first round of when I did this whole macro Tetris thing, that's the outcome that I had was like, ugh.
Yeah.
And when I weaned myself off of it, it was like, okay, I generally know what fits into a day and makes my body feel good and allows me to have the things that I find pleasure in that I'm not willing to give up.
Yes.
And that for me is tough because wine is my thing. And I, whatever, people can judge me all day long about it. But it's my thing. Just like for some people it's chocolate and for some people it's chips. And mine is very much a coffee at the beginning of the day and wine at the end of the night. It bookends my day. And if that's what I want to put in, then what are the other things that I have to do normally on a daily basis to equal that out, right? But the second go round, as I'm doing it, what my coach is working on with me is you can choose days that you don't think about it because it is a day for pleasure and enjoyment. So my husband's birthday was this weekend and we worked on that during Thanksgiving and then again during Christmas. And I felt like I was walking without a net because I'm like, wait, what do you mean? I'm not going to track today and everything's going to be okay. And I will back up and say I had gone a long time without weighing myself. I refused to because of what I went through in college. Like even to the point where, and I'm not lying, would avoid going to the doctor annually because I did not want to get on the scale and chose doctors that I would call and be like, can I look the other way? I mean, how ridiculous is that? Right. And I'm not a big person, but long short, when I did my first round of macro Tetris, I told my coach, I'm like, I don't weigh myself. And she's like, well, it's just a data point. And I'm like, well, I'm not there yet. And I don't need the data point.
That's great self-awareness.
What I realized this time, because I've been going through another program around that mindset, is that it is a data point. And as long as it's not about weighing yourself or not weighing yourself, it's about the attachment you have to the number. Boom. But what it's been able to teach me is it is a data point. And it's taught me that there are days that it goes up and days that it goes down. And it has zero to do with the exercise that I put into my body, zero to do with the food that I put into my body, whether I tracked or whether I didn't. And it's all based on sodium, hydration, rest, recovery, and my hormones. And when I finally came to peace with, okay, it's a good data point for me to have on a daily basis to remind myself that it isn't those things and I don't have to obsess about them. And I'm not saying that will work for everyone, but that is the shift that I needed rather than just, I fear when people just turn a blind eye to the scale like I did for so long without changing their attachment or detachment from the thing. So it's an evolution, but going back to my daughter, I mean, I do have to look at, okay, what am I teaching her by weighing my food and what's the discussion we have around that? Or why do I choose to eat cauliflower rice rather than white rice? Those kind of things. Or why do I eat these interesting protein noodles instead of the white noodles that she loves so much? And I'm finding that she's at an age where I have to start working some of that fun enjoyment food back into my life and not letting it just be the wine, which she doesn't get quite yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I didn't like wine till I was in my 20s. And even then,
right. Hopefully she's not going to like it. Right. Hopefully she's not near that yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough. And, I think to sum it all up, it's just being really mindful about the conversations I have about my body and what she sees and the reactions I have to her and the conversations she has about food or what she does with food, because I find myself putting myself on her all the time, right? Like, oh my God, you're eating another Hershey's Kiss. I'm like, she's a gymnast that trains 10 hours a week that still has recess every day at school. Like she can eat the damn Hershey's Kiss. It's not a big deal. That's me talking. So it's still a work in progress. But as with anything, I think awareness is step number one in catching yourself. And then either sitting down and telling her, hey, what I just said or how I lashed out at you about your food choices, that's not you, that's on me. And I'm still working on it. If you need to talk to me about this stuff, we need to be able to have that dialogue because you're going to go through some of these same things yourself with your social groups and God, with TikTok and Instagram and everything else. So
I'm not ready for all that. Well, my kids watch, they watch YouTube, but
it's so painful because it's still not real. And I know there's this body positivity movement and like remove the filters but it doesn't matter. It's still, it's not even what you see or don't see that's good or bad. It's that I don't know if you felt this, but even like the last year of having to be on Zoom every day instead of phone calls and staring at myself every day, has actually it's why I'm doing this new program. It's pushed me backwards to some degree because it's been a long time. Like I would get really stressed out if I was going to film a DVD shoot or film a DVD, or if I was going to be on camera, or if I was going to be at a conference. Like those are my peak moments of anxiety of like, oh God, people are going to see me and I have to look this way. I need to lose the 5 pounds. But I could temper that because it wasn't all the time.
Right.
But every day I've been on camera literally every day since the pandemic started, I feel like, and it has made me crazy because you see things that I'm like, I can't control what, my face looks like on Zoom through diet. So just trying to, and that's what our kids are going through too, right? It's not just about more people not using filters. It's just, they're reflected back to themselves and you never see yourself the way that other people see you. And I think that's my biggest thing is body dysmorphia drove both of these things, the exercise disorder and the disordered eating. It all comes from, you are not a good reflector of who you are, how you think and how you feel. Like you've got to have a really trusted mirror that looks back at you sometimes. And that's your kid a lot of times.
Yeah. So much there. I've been reading articles about how cosmetic procedures are on the rise, partly because people have time to recover, but like what you said, we're watching ourselves, we're self-conscious. And it is triggering a lot of people's disordered habits and mindsets. And I think it's good to be aware of it. And I think it's good for everyone to just know, like, you're not alone. And, but man, yeah, it's hard. It's hard because it's like, yeah, when we were kids, like selfies didn't exist. Like, if someone took a picture of you, it was like 6 weeks later, maybe they develop it, maybe they make a double and give it to you, maybe they don't. And that's
right.
it. And now,
no one else saw it. Now everyone's terrified if someone takes a picture of me and posts it on the internet, right? I'm like, can I check it before you post it? You got to make the right angle. You know how to pose? Like I learned from my work with Shalene Johnson, how to pose to make yourself look better on camera. But like, why do we have to do that? But, I'm as guilty as the other person. It's so prevalent and that's not going away. So I think that's one thing I'm learning right now is you can wish all of that away. It's not going away. So how do we change the way we interact with that information and socialize how we're all feeling about it and be really real about it, right? You can't run away from it. So how do we figure to just like social media is never going away for all the other reasons why it's horrible. So how do you learn to engage with it intentionally and make peace with whatever it brings out in you, right? And I mean, that's definitely, that's working your brain. It's shifting your mindset, and that's hard work, really hard work.
Yeah. And I think not to sound too like woo, but it's like, I think it's shifting your soul. It's like forgiving yourself. It's for being able to say, I'm not perfect. I'm not where I want to be. I'm not, maybe I compare myself to others too much, but being aware of that and going, I'm going to forgive myself. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to have faith that like I am enough, which is very hard to do.
Yeah.
But if you peel back all the layers, that's what it's about. Like, am I good enough?
It is. And this mindset program that I'm going through, it's built on such an interesting premise of if you continue to bring the same person to the problem, you get the same result. And I think that's what I'm learning is like, I brought my same self to the way I engaged with food. And every time I would try a different path forward with managing my weight or whatever, it's exactly what you said. It was about thinking, if only I could do this, I could get that. And so until I break that cycle, it's going to be the same with exercise, with work, with eating, with money, with everything. So that's my unlock. And everyone has a different unlock, a different thing that is holding you in the patterns that you have. And it's interesting when you start to see the way they play out in lots of different places in your life.
Well, they say the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And I'm like, ooh, that's kind of true. But I really appreciate the fact that you said you're talking about this with your daughter. Like, I don't remember my parents talking to me about food or about bodies. I distinctly remember my mom saying, my parents would be like, oh, if you're full, stop eating, or serve yourself an amount that you think is appropriate. My mom would say, I do that because my dad would fill my plate up and then expect me to eat it all. And I was chubby. And I went to college and realized I could smoke cigarettes and not have much of an appetite. And if I wanted cake for a meal, I could eat cake for a meal. And that was my mom for a long time until she like quit smoking and discovered how delicious food is. But that's the only conversation I remember having about bodies and food. That's it. It wasn't discussed.
No, it wasn't. And I think it's kind of like exercise wasn't discussed then either. And I think there's two reasons. We have way more access to information, right? Like, I talk about this a lot in fitness to personal trainers. And like, if people don't need you to learn how to do a squat, they can jump on the internet. So if that's still what you're holding up as your unique selling proposition, you've got a problem. Like, it's not a secret. And it's the same thing with food now. I think it's just there's so much access to information about eating and access to food that it's become a central part of our culture, right? And I think exercise is the same way with our kids. We got exercise. It wasn't something you had to be mindful about putting in your day. I mean, I rode my bike all over the place. I walked 2 miles to school. I mean, it wasn't, that's why I was looking at your question. When did fitness become part of your life? I'm like, oh, I didn't even know there was such a thing as fitness back then. Nobody did. We jump roped for heart and did the presidential physical fitness test. That was about it. And I think now, I mean, I hope more people are having those conversations, but it actually terrifies me a little bit because we have access to information, but I don't know that we've all processed our issues with food or bodies or anything else in a way that we can confidently have those questions with. I mean, I feel more armed than the average person, and I still want to take words and put them back in my mouth all day long. And I really get fearful of what path I'm leading her down. So, I mean, I hope we'll have more conversations, but also seek out higher quality information rather than just from social media stars.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Looking back, do you think there was some inevitability to you developing an unhealthy relationship with food and body just because of being in the dance and cheerleading and gymnastics world?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, any career activity that puts you in spandex all day and in front of mirrors and demands. And it's not just that. I've been thinking a lot about this with my daughter in gymnastics because quite frankly, I hate her being in gymnastics, but that's a whole other conversation. We were talking about like the control thing. Gymnastics and cheerleading in particular is a subjective sport. It's not soccer. You don't score a goal or not score a goal, and maybe there's a questionable call in the game. It is a subjective sport that you get scored by human beings, and they cannot take away how you look and the performance factor with the technicality. That's part one. And part two, you never get it right. Like very rarely do you get a 10 or do you get a perfect score. So all of your practice and all of your training, even if you have a great coach or a bad coach, is all about how do you do it better. And not that all sports aren't like that, but you get, how do I express this to my daughter? It's like in soccer, if I'm being pushed to be better, the reward I get is scoring more points or making the play or, right, there's an objective.
Right. And it can be ugly, right? But if you get the ball in the net, it's a point, whether it's ugly or gorgeous, right? It's like,
right. And so it reinforces your training and your, and I'm not about not teaching people how to do things perfect. I'll explain that in a minute. But when you look at gymnastics, like I saw this way on her pre-COVID, and she actually retired. It sounds so silly for a 10-year-old, but retired during COVID because she got space enough away from it that she realized she didn't like the way she felt when she was at practice. And she didn't have the language to articulate it, but through conversation, it was, Mom, I never get it right. And then I start feeling like I can't do anything right. So we had to find a path back into gymnastics where it was more about the fun of the sport and less about getting the perfect score and about creating a training program that accentuates the positives that she brings to gymnastics and not continues to weigh in on her negatives, if that makes sense, right? Because in a junior Olympic sport, you have to do all the apparatus and you have to do all the skills and you're all judged on the same things versus what she's doing now. But I go back, I'm not a person that doesn't believe I need to teach her the right way to do things. Just like when you learn to write, nobody gives you an imperfect alphabet to trace, right? They give you the perfect alphabet. They don't expect you to do it perfect, but it's what you measure your performance against. And I think that's the problem with things like gymnastics and cheerleading is what is perfect there is an intangible factor in perfection in a performance sport that you can never attain. And so not only do the clothes and the fact that being tinier makes you better at those things, lead you possibly to having, it's inevitable, you will have an issue around exercise or body dysmorphia or something, body dysmorphia usually, and then it manifests in the eating and the exercise. It's inevitable, but it's also the way in which you are taught to approach your craft, which is a place of perfection, and it's unattainable perfection. So yes, I don't think I had, and which I'm just like, oh God, please don't do gymnastics. Please don't do cheerleading. But she's suited for it. She has the body for it. So I can't let her go. We just have to, socialize those conversations for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And how old is she?
She's 11 and a half, just turned 11 and a half the other day, because we still celebrate half birthdays around here.
Oh, that's so fun. We often celebrate my husband's half because his birthday is between Christmas and New Year's. And it's just like difficult to get people together. So we're all about his half in particular. Nice. So yeah, what advice would you want to give to anyone who is, when you were saying like that you kind of woke up and realized, wow, I was saying some things that were potentially harmful in my classes. What advice would you give instructors or, master trainers who are training the instructors? Mm-hmm. What should they look out for in their cueing, or what should they seek to emulate, or what should they seek to trim? Yeah.
I mean, I have a couple things. One, I think you have to get really clear about who you are bringing to the microphone first. What was your motivation for becoming an instructor or a trainer? What is your motivation behind doing your class or doing your workout? And ensure that you can strip all of that out and be empowering when you teach. So the quickest way, and I always go backwards, that's the harder work. But the minute that I had awareness that my baggage was on display with a microphone, I got really conscientious about what I was saying, and words, I heard them differently. I was like, oh, I want to take those words back that I just said. And I can give you like the top 5, right? Like, we need to stop having classes called the turkey burn.
Amen.
Just eat. Yeah. When did it become like this thing to have a 90-minute all out, kill yourself work? I was so happy. I mean, if there's one thing that was happy about the pandemic, is less people were allowed to have those classes. So you didn't see it as much on social media this year, but it perpetuates this myth that, okay, I know I'm going to eat all day and be lazy, so I need to go work out for 90 minutes. Why? That's one. Stop doing stupid classes like that. And I don't parse my words anymore. Second, you've got to stop creating classes that talk about body parts and what's happening with a body part. I mean, right? Like abs and guns, or buns and guns, or really, can we just get back to like, are we strengthening our bodies? Are we working our heart? And I know those aren't sexy titles, but again, they scream to the same people that then perpetuate this myth that exercise is for aesthetics. And it is, if we are going to capitalize on what has happened during COVID, which is people being more receptive and open to the message that health is important, and it's a long-term gain, but now we're seeing those long-term, carrots being dangled right up in front of our faces when we're battling this disease or this illness. I think that's really important. And then there are all kinds of cues that you just got to get away from. Anything that slips out of your mouth that's like, okay, and this is for, the wobble in the back of your arm. No, it's not. It's to strengthen your tricep. And you need to strengthen your tricep because it's the biggest muscle in your upper arm, and it's going to make you stronger and able to do this thing. Like, we have to attach it to movement and function and less about what we're tightening or toning. Or the cues that we all accidentally use about it's almost bikini season, or your arms are going to be showing soon, so let's spend some extra time on those. And things like, work hard now so you can earn your wine later. They feel like nails on a chalkboard to me now that I have the awareness. And I can't do classes where the teachers teach from that place. Is there still an audience for it? Yes. But if you have the responsibility of teaching for a wide variety of people that you have no idea what they're there for, the best thing you can do is not use those kind of cues and teach from that place, because you don't know who has an eating disorder, has disordered eating, has an exercise addiction, is teetering on the edge, is looking, for you to be the beacon. Like, you just need to shut your mouth and talk about the joy of movement and exercise. I mean, I wish we would stop calling it exercise or fitness. Like, I just want people to move. And I think that's one thing that frustrated me during COVID is how many gyms were, yes, exercise is medicine, but I don't have to do it inside of a gym. Help me figure out how I can do it in the gym, out of the gym, and everywhere else. And don't look down on me if walking is my thing, or right. Like, there's just so many, we've got to open up our definition of what fitness is. And fitness to some people feels really unattainable anyway. It's just movement, finding joy in movement. So I wish teachers could and trainers could embrace that, but it's hard because we're all crazy. We love exercise. Like, you would have never become an instructor or, a cycling instructor like you if you didn't enjoy doing it. And we're teaching to people that might not.
Right.
And that's an awesome responsibility, but we can't, that's why I always say, like, you can't bring your baggage onto the microphone, and you've got to stop and figure out what your baggage is first before you start cueing your classes.
I think that's really, really great advice. Just some self-awareness.
For sure.
And I think just to add on, one other thing that I think people don't realize is if you say something like, let's attack those thighs, or let's get the jiggle wiggle or whatever, if there's somebody in your class who has been in a larger body and has struggled with that, it's like, are you telling them that their body's not acceptable? It's like,
right.
How does that land on them? That's not going to feel good. So,
And I mean, the last thing I would say is, even beyond, because I know I spent a lot of time talking about like the aesthetic cues, there's even cues that we all use. Like, we make the assumption that people come to the gym to get fit. In other words, we believe that they come to either lose something or improve something. Some people are just there because they know they need to move their bodies every day. So when we're always talking about going bigger, faster, better, improving, progressions, I know you can jump, just try it once, you'll never know till you do it. Like, that's not why everyone's there. And sometimes that's just enough to make people question their own motives. Like, even if they came to it with a pure motive, when all they're hearing in exercise classes and with their trainers is about getting better, bigger, faster, etc., they start to go, or sometimes they even get called out, right? You've been in those classes where they're like, oh my God, cycling instructors that walk over and turn your resistance for you because I can tell you're faking it. You have no idea why I didn't turn the knob. And who are you? I'm going to get real upset. Like, who are you to come do that for me? At least I'm here. There's 85% of the world that's not even here. Give me credit for showing up. And so I think sometimes it's checking that baggage too, of like, that may be your reason for exercise. And I know my relationship to exercise has changed. I just don't want to go backwards. I'm not trying to get better. I just don't want to go backwards, right?
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. I've had the experience of an instructor coming over to my bike and turning it up, and I have a lot to say about that. But what I will say is that I just tell my classes, listen, you do what you need to do. You can follow my cues, and you can also look at them as suggestions, because I'm not the spinning police. Like, do you? And I think, like, for me, that mentality of got to get fitter, faster, stronger, blah, blah, that was also tied up with my sense of, am I good enough? Am I fast enough? Like, if I ran this race fast enough, then I'm good enough. And I've realized over time, what? I'm fine, whether I run fast or slow, or if I walk and listen to a podcast. That's not my character. That's not who I am. Yeah. And so I think it is really valuable to come back to, like, am I experiencing joy? Like, am I experiencing community in this room or on this Zoom or however you're exercising? Like, am I getting my fresh air? Those are, I would argue, more valuable than, are you getting quote unquote better?
Absolutely. And, it used to just be instructors and trainers that were nagging us. And now my watch is nagging me, and the leaderboard is nagging me. And like, there are so many inputs that tell you you're not winning these days, or you're not living up to the expectation that, even though my watch is really smart and it set it based on my baseline, there are some days that, and it was funny because I wrote an article about like breaking up with my Apple Watch. I love my Apple Watch, but the best advice Jay Blonick gave me, who is the guy behind the fitness on the watch, he's like, you do know you can change the goal on the watch, right? I'm like, what? He's like, every day you can change it. So if you know that today is your day that you're not doing XYZ, give yourself a win. You own the watch. You're in charge of the watch. It's just there, to your point, to give you suggestions.
Right.
I was like, oh yeah. But for some reason, and we have to remember, even I give up that control to other people, and we need to take that control back. I mean, the professional has a part to play for sure. And instead of being that wise woman on the mountaintop that's like, I've got your answers, I'm going to cheerlead you to the top, just walk beside me and put your hand on my back, offer me suggestions, and then do not judge me. It's just feedback. It's just awareness, right? Or it's not making you good or bad. It's, oh, there's so much about exercise that's messed up, and exercise instruction and all of our bells and whistles and tools. And sometimes just ride the damn bike.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And will you send me a link to the article of,
I will.
I want to post that in the show notes.
I will.
Let's see. Let's jump into oh wait, no, let's not. Let's really quick. I want to ask you, what has been the most helpful resource so far for you in navigating a new relationship with food and your body?
Best resource for navigating. I'd say there are two. One is Brain Powered Weight Loss, a great book by my friend Eliza Kingsford. She's the one that's teaching me all about this mental mind shift of, it's about changing your mindset that will change your relationship to food and exercise, not the other way around, right? You can't keep bringing your same self to the same problem. That would be one. And then I would say Stronger You. And I hold back from saying this because what I'm learning from Eliza is Stronger You is working for me because I've shifted my mind. Stronger You isn't the magic bullet for everyone.
Okay.
But for me, Stronger You is great. It was the first nutrition program that I've used, that it's a coaching nutrition program that's helping me unpack my relationship with food and what I'm doing. So those would be the two things that have helped me a ton.
Okay, cool. All right. Shall we jump into the quick set?
Yes.
Okay. What's your favorite meal? Speaking of food.
I've got two. I love chicken wings so much. You have no idea. And I'm from the South. I really like fried chicken.
Okay. Where are you from?
I'm from Florida.
Oh, you're from Florida. Do you have Bojangles in Florida?
Yes.
I used to live in North Carolina, and I really miss Bojangles and like some chicken and sweet tea and some biscuits.
Yeah.
The curly fries.
Yes. Oh my gosh. When I was pregnant, all I wanted was Popeyes. And actually my husband burned down our house making me fried chicken, or burned down our kitchen making me fried chicken while I was pregnant. That's a whole other story, but I really love fried chicken.
Wow. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book is, and I wrote these down and now I can't find my answers because I was like, there are so many. Indistractable is my favorite like self-improvement book that I've read lately. It's fantastic. And then Little Women for fiction. Love.
Did you watch the movie?
I've watched every movie, and yes, it is the last one was my favorite for sure.
So beautiful. I read the book when I was really little. I don't remember it that well, but I actually took my kids to the movies. God, when was last Christmas when you could still go to the movies?
Feels like forever ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, wow, it was beautiful. What's your favorite vacation spot?
The beach for sure, or Disney World. I'm really having Disney World withdrawal right now.
Oh, how many times have you been there?
Oh, you don't want to know. We go at least once or twice a year. We have a problem.
You really love it.
We really, and the sad thing is it's not my daughter that loves it. It's me and my husband. It's really a problem.
What do you love about it?
I have no idea. No, I do know. We've talked about this. It's not even Disney World. I think it's the one vacation. Like if I go to the beach, I can still sit on the beach and read a book, but still think about what I need to be doing or what I'm not doing. There is something truly magical about Disney World where like you can't check your phone at Disney World in line. You can't think about problems. Like it's just such a magical experience. I feel like it's the one place where I'm so distracted and having such a good time that I don't think I'm truly on vacation. It's the only place I've ever been where I felt like I was truly on vacation. So we keep going back for that reason.
Okay. I ask from a true curiosity and not judgment. It's just my idea of like a nightmare. Like, I'm like, I don't want to wait in line. I don't want to sweat like that. Like, I do love roller coasters, but that being said, I haven't been there in like 20 years. So like, maybe it would be a different experience if I went.
And there's ways around it. You got to find the right times. There's special ways to get around all that stuff. It's good. We found that like, we know how to do Disney World.
All right, well, when I go, or if I go, maybe we can consult. Okay. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Not seeing tasks through to completion.
When other people do that, or when you do
Other
that?
people don't do it. Like I used to call my husband Mr. 87%. I'm like, just finish it. Like, you unloaded the dishwasher, all but the silverware. You did, like, that just drives me crazy. Just finish it right then and then move on. That's my biggest pet peeve. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
What is your superpower?
This is so funny. Again, Jay Blunt told this to me because I never realized it was my superpower till someone else told me. It is making sense of chaos. So bringing order to chaos. And I create systems. Like, my brain sees forest and trees and can very quickly make a spreadsheet or a table out of it. It's a really odd thing, but it makes me very happy.
That's a great skill for what you do, coming into businesses and helping them.
Yeah.
And it's your goal is to help them, like, be more profitable and grow and serve more people.
Yes. And I'm very good at creating systems. So yeah, making sense out of chaos, like listening to someone talk for an hour and going, oh, these were the 4 bullet points, those kind of things.
So is your closet like just crazy organized? Like, you know where everything is?
I know where everything is for everyone in my house. Yes. Everything has a place. My husband makes fun of my junk drawer all the time. He's like, this is not a junk drawer. Everything has a slot. Like, yes, I've got problems.
That's beautiful. No, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed that I've, like, spent money on professional organizer because I feel like I should know how to do that, but it is a gift and I don't know how to do that.
Skill.
And
Yeah.
my mother lives very far away. She's good at that, but she's far away. So I'm like, well, just have to hire somebody because it's a skill that I don't have.
Yeah.
What is your worst quality?
Impatience.
Did I just ask you that?
No, but it's impatience for
Okay.
sure. I get very impatient.
Okay. That makes sense. You're like, why are you doing things 87%? That kind of
And
dives.
why I do things really fast too. I talk fast, I read fast, I move with intention. Like, I'm like, just come on, just get on with it. So I need to slow down sometimes.
Okay. What is the fitness gear you cannot live without?
Well, I said my road bike, but I don't know if that counts, but in my world it does. And if not, my Apple Watch, now that I have a better relationship with it, is my gear that I can't live without. And not for the closing of the rings thing, but all of the other information it provides: sleep, rest, recovery. I love my watch.
You like having the data.
I
That
do.
makes sense. You like to make the charts and the tables and making sense
Yeah,
of
I'm a
chaos.
data person.
As far as the road bike, you live on the Front Range, right?
Mhm, I do.
Where do you like to ride your bike?
So we're out off airport. So I like to ride around like 75th out to Hygiene, out on all those country roads.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, and finally, what does fitness mean to you?
Gosh, I think I alluded to it before. I mean, I'm definitely on a mission to redefine fitness because I don't believe that everyone identifies with that word. Like, if you weren't an athlete in school, if you didn't participate in something that was athletic, you don't have movement literacy, fitness can feel really scary. So I think, to me, fitness equals movement and falling in love with what your body is capable of versus judging it for what it can't do, and trying to find as many ways as possible to move your body and help you, find one. I think I said earlier, one of my favorite books also is No Sweat by Michelle Seeger. And she talks a lot about finding exercise as a chore versus a gift. And so I think if we can change fitness to be movement, teach people not to be afraid to move their bodies and not judge how they move their bodies, then they can find something that feels like a gift that they'll do forever. Because it's about finding something you'll do forever, not just for a short time. So yeah, I think it's just about really appreciating your body is what it means to me.
That's awesome. And is there anything that I should have asked you that I haven't asked you yet?
Gosh, no, I feel like we've had such a great conversation. No, I think we covered it.
Awesome. I love your energy. I'm so glad you came on. Oh, and tell everybody, if there's anything you want to say more about what you do and where people can find you, let us know that.
Yeah, my website, shannonfable.com, is the best place. And from there, you can get to all my social channels. And yeah, I'd love to see you guys over there.
Okay, great. And I will just personally say that I love LinkedIn is the main social that I'm on. I don't really like any of the other ones. But I love seeing you on LinkedIn. Like, you're always sharing good stuff. It's not just like, I don't know, it's thoughtful. It's thoughtful, useful stuff. So I highly recommend connecting with Shannon on LinkedIn if you're on there. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks. This has been awesome.
Good. Thank you for having me. And thanks for doing this work. This is a really important conversation for people to have.
Thank you. That is my hope. I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you for joining me and listening to that conversation with Shannon Fable. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you want to go check out Shannon, definitely go find her at her website, shannonfable.com. Also, she's a fantastic person to follow on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people call themselves thought leaders. I actually kind of think that term is overused, but Shannon is a legit thought leader, and you will see that if you are following her posts on LinkedIn. One of the biggest things I took away from that conversation was the idea of how much our words matter, particularly if you have any influence or any type of leadership role in the fitness industry as a fitness professional. Maybe like me, you're also a fitness writer. Maybe you're a group fitness instructor. Maybe you're just like the fittest person you know among your friends. You would be surprised how much influence your words have and how much you might not even realize that people are looking up to you. And when we say things like, oh, it's almost bikini season, I got to get rid of this, my bat wings or what have you. I'm cringing just saying the word bat wings. Maybe you do feel bad about your arms. I guess you're allowed to feel bad about your arms, but let's dive into that. Like, what does that mean? There's some real fat phobia there. And if you have your own issues to work on, particularly if you're in front of a room, those are your issues to work on, right? You don't need to be putting that on this whole room of people. And I think it's just, I know we talked about it on the call, but I think it bears repeating because it's important. You may be hurting somebody with your words. When you say, oh, I've got to get rid of XYZ part of my body that I don't like, you're essentially telling somebody else in that room who also has a similar feature that it's not good enough, right? That they need to change, that by definition, it is not good. But the truth is, we are all good just the way we are, right? We don't get our value from our body shape or size. And yeah, many of us are still working on that. I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, I'm perfect. I look in the mirror every day and I just love myself. I mean, yeah, I love myself, but sure, I notice my flaws, but I'm not bringing that to the microphone in a group fitness class. So I hope that you will just at the very least, get curious about, if you're inclined to say things like that, where's that coming from? So that was, I just love that Shannon was willing to speak so openly with us about it. So if you're curious about how you can modify your own self-talk and maybe take away some of your focus from any anxiety about your body and food and exercise and start enjoying your life more and clearing out all that mental clutter to make room for living out your true purpose and being the badass that you are meant to be, I would love for you to check out my Body Positive coaching services. That's all available on my website. And if you like this podcast, please, please, please rate it and review it on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. That just helps other people find it and get to hear the messages that I'm trying to spread. So have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.